Hey y'all, Myra here, also known as the Paranormal Chick. So today I'm going to bring you a story of a Bigfoot that saved an entire family. When this video was sent to me, well, this story, I should say, not video, it touched me deeply, just because we've all heard the stories of Bigfoots and the fear that they incite, and sometimes of the, I guess you can call them urban legends, of people being snatched and disappearing in the woods, especially women. It's very rarely we hear about them doing good deeds, feats that we would never expect them to do. So this story comes out of the Midwest during tornado season. So we know how tornado season is. It can be fast, brutal, and devastating. And this family, they were issued a tornado warning. So without further ado, husband, wife, and children went into their bunker. They're on a farm. There's trees, wild, there are animals, pigs, horses on the farm. So the storm hits. It's rough. It's loud, thundering, lightning, winds. The winds, they described it as howling, and they hear just all kinds of noise in the bunker, and they're prepared to last there for a week. They have enough supplies for a week. They're not too worried about it. They figured, they'll just hatching down the hatch and just buckle down and ride it out. Sometime during the night, during the first 24 hours, husband and wife heard a lot of booming and cracking and just breaking, and just like if branches were scraping all along the top of the bunker hatch. They didn't think anything of it until that morning. That morning, when they attempted to open up the hatch, they couldn't budge it. Her husband was able to crack the hatch door open just a little bit, enough to realize that one of the apple trees standing next to the bunker had probably been split in half, and half the trunk was now blocking the door. They were effectively trapped in the bunker. At first, they weren't too worried. They figured, search parties and their fellow neighbors would be around. Eventually, they know that their farm would be, looked at. People would come looking to make sure everybody was okay if any assistance was needed. And they were well stocked for a week. So it wasn't too much of a need of right away, an emergency to be out of that place. If anything, the only thing that they were in sore need of was entertainment for the children, because they did not have anything. So imagine having kids in a bunker, in a shelter with you and your husband, no entertainment, no TV, no phones, no nothing. So you could only imagine just the stress of trying to keep kids entertained and not fighting and not crying, and just enclosed spaces. That was the worst that they had to worry about. A couple hours went by, nobody's shown up. A couple more hours have gone by. Now it's kind of setting late into the evening. Still nothing, still nobody. Wife starts to begin to worry just a little bit. But they figured they'd have to spend, another 24 hours in the bunker, and then it would be back to normal. Sometime in the next couple of hours, because they kept the bunker door wedged open just in case people showed up and they can start yelling and hollering. They started hearing noises outside the bunker. They started hearing what sounded like heavy footsteps walking around the trapdoor, the hatch. And then the smell wafted into their little shelter, and she said it smelled like wet dog mixed with bad teenager BO, just this awful stench. But they heard the heavy footsteps, so they started yelling. She and her husband started pounding on the hatch door, trying to grab its attention. Now the kids are awake, asking their mom what's going on, and they're yelling, and nobody's saying anything. Nobody's responding. She, of course, started wondering why. Why weren't they? Obviously heard somebody out there walking, heavy footsteps. They heard it. They heard the scrambling around. They heard and smelled something out there. And her daughter started asking her, how come they're not answering? How come they're not responding? And she didn't have an answer for her daughter. She didn't know Eventually, that smell went away. Kind of made her and her husband uneasy, just because that thing or person or whatever just would not respond. And she knows they heard her and her husband yelling. She said probably about 30 minutes later to an hour, they heard the heavy footsteps again. Again, she and her husband started banging and screaming and yelling for help. Still no response. Just that repugnant smell, that heavy, wet dog smell, that bad teenager body odor mixed with an old gym bag smell. But no response. She started getting nervous. And her husband actually shushed them and told everybody to be quiet. And they actually closed the trap door just because they started getting that eerie, uneasy feeling. So her husband and the kids bed down for the night. She decides to stay up just a little bit longer, hoping to see if somebody or anybody shows up, or any type of help. Sometime in the middle of the night, she hears the footsteps again. The trapdoor is back open, that little crack that they were able to do, but this time she's not yelling because she smells the same smell. She actually grabs the hatch and hangs onto it, because this time she's hearing things move on top of the hatch door. She's hearing scraping and branches breaking, and she's scared. So at this point, she wakes up her husband. They close the hatch and they hang on to it, because that scraping and groaning is happening and they have no idea what's going on. They just smell that repugnant odor. They hear the heavy footsteps. There's stuff scraping against their door and they're scared. And then it went silent. They didn't immediately open up the door. Actually waited several hours before they even attempted. It was probably early morning when her husband decided to crack it again to see if they can get, scream for help, listen, anything changes. When he goes to crack open the hatch door, it's when he realizes the tree trunk has been removed. He opens the door and they all step out of the bunker. And she and her husband right away notice that all around their bunker are massive feet, massive. She estimates the size of the foot, anywhere from 10 to 13 feet long. She's not very good with sizes. She just knows it's bigger than a normal man's. So I'm thinking they're more in like the 13 to 15 up to the 18 foot long. They were huge. They were massive, about this big, all around the bunker. And the huge apple tree, a fully grown, matured apple tree trunk, was rolled off to the side. That tree would have taken several men or even some sort of excavator to remove it. There was nobody around. They couldn't explain it. They just see the evidence on the ground, these massive footprints, the trunk removed, and they didn't have an explanation. So they go about walking the property, taking a look at the damage, see what the tornado did, checking on their livestock. Thankfully, majority of their buildings were intact. Their home was intact. The tornado wasn't as devastating as we've known tornadoes to be. As she's walking her land, she hears her pigs that she typically takes to market squealing, yelling, squealing, making that sound as if it's a predator attacking it. And she knew that sound, so she took off running to the pen. She gets about 3 to 5 feet from the pen when she comes to an abrupt stop. And directly in front of her is a 10-foot tall humanoid that at first she thought, is it a gorilla? But it couldn't be, because it was standing straight. It was standing up tall. It had the extremely long arms, short matted hair, grayish color, a protruding forehead, a flat nose, matted hair, kind of grayish in color all over its body. And it had a pig underneath its arm. She said she knew what she was looking at. She heard the stories. Her grandma used to tell her the stories of the wild men that roam their part of the country. and it turned and looked at her. And she said when it looked at her, she connected. It wasn't an animal, but it wasn't fully man. But she knew, it understood, and it looked at her and she looked at him, or it, and it turned and walked away. She knew that it was a Bigfoot, and she knew that Bigfoot saved her and her family's life. So she was okay with him taking his price. It was well worth it. I thought that story was amazing. And I still do. And I'm glad that her family made it out of there in one piece, and they didn't lose more of their home or their land or their animals. But that a Bigfoot, who a lot of people like to state they're just not real, or they're wild, unknown apes, or just some other unidentified creature. But for it to know it needed to remove that tree trunk in order to save that family, there's more there. There's more to it being an intelligent being who understands and feels and loves, and probably has its own packs or families that it does its own protection for. So this is just one family's account. Now it's up to you to decide if you think it's real or not. But I just want to tell you, just keep an open mind. So many things are going out on our world right now, and we all need to just have that open mind and be willing to consider the possibility. Thank you to the family who shared this story. This was amazing. I hope you loved it as much as I did. Leave your likes, comments, posts. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks.